Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of a gameplay experience. Today we will be looking at the 5th map in the series, aka Kino Toten, and I will be talking about 5 categories and giving it a final rating. These 5 categories include its innovation, creativity, visuals, difficulty, and ultimately cons. So with that said, let's get right into it. In terms of innovation, Kino did fairly decent with a new perk, a new wonder weapon, a brand new engine, aka Black Ops 1, and a new zombie. Kino Toten does have a decent amount of innovation to it, and it's surprisingly not very highlighted in comparison to Derice because, as a whole, both maps are very similar with very small tweaks between the two. So I think it's important to highlight all these innovations. Amongst the creativity, I do like the idea of the abandoned theater. It's pretty cool, and the wonder weapon itself, the thunder gun, it was a very nice new addition to Call of Duty Zombies, and on top of that, having a third gun with the new perk, aka Meal Kick. It was a good idea as a whole, considering there was a glitch back in the original Derice where you could get a third weapon when normally you'd only be allowed to hold 2, so the new perk is definitely, I would say as a whole, a good idea, despite the cost of it being a little bit too high. And on top of that, the Black Ops 1 engine is pretty well made. It's less buggy than the World at War engine, but it still does have a couple problems. However, as a whole, from a creative standpoint, Kino Toten does fairly good. Looking from a theme and visual perspective here, I have to say that Kino definitely didn't have the best hit in the world, but it certainly wasn't an utter miss either. Though a lot of the map looks really dark grayish and black and everything like that, therefore it's a little bit too dull for one's liking, I do have to give points that the alleyway does look pretty decent. I like the sunlight for sure. On top of that, I also do like the detail that was put into the bedrooms, especially the laboratory area that you will visit for a very small amount of time after you go through the teleporter in Kino Toten. As a whole, the visuals could be a little bit better, but it's certainly not too much of a disappointment. So it's an okay step as far as steps go. Kino Toten nails difficulty in the same way Derice did. It's friendly to every single type of player. Beginner players can train at the back area that you can see on screen here. And more advanced players could probably be a little bit more risky if they wish, but as a whole, this teaches you the basics. This makes sure that you're not rusty or anything. As a whole, the difficulty is perfect, and I'm very happy that Treyarch actually carried the difficulty from the end of one game to the start of a new game, World at War to Black Ops 1. So I think Treyarch deserves a round of applause for that. Kino Toten isn't a flawless map. In fact, I would say it has more flaws than Derice does. However, it is still a good map as a whole. I'm going to go through each of them. So starting with the Nova 6 crawlers, although they're a cool addition, they are pains in the ass to deal with, especially if you're in their proximity when they die and their gas comes out and you're blinded. It's a very big pain in the ass. Though it is not the smallest nitpick, but certainly not the biggest either. On top of that, the knife lunge physics for Black Ops 1 are definitely a little bit glitchy, and the reason why I'm holding Kino accountable for this is because it was the launch map that came with Black Ops 1, so it makes sense to mainly focus this point on Kino Toten and debatably 5. On top of that, I will have to say that the second door to the theater, it's a death trap if you're trying to train. And as a result, that's a bit of a falter to the map design as a whole. It's not a super big problem, but yeah. And another thing on top of that, Meal Kick is definitely overpriced. I would probably reduce it to 3,000. It'd be kind of symbolic too. 3 weapons, 3 sets of 1,000. I think that works. And one more thing, and this is pretty small. It's a small inconvenience, but relinking the teleporter every time you use it to go to Pack-a-Punch, it does get a little bit obnoxious to constantly do over and over. However, if you're not constantly switching weapons every round, it's not much of an issue. So Kino Toten's innovation and creativity both being very strong, along with its lackluster visuals but still passable visuals, and its difficulty being very appropriate, similar to Derice. And on top of that, its cons being though small and mostly avoidable, despite there being numerous amounts of them, Kino is a good map as a whole. In fact, I would probably give this map an 8.25 out of 10. It's a good map, it's fun to play, it does have flaws, and it is hard to ignore some of these flaws, but some of them can in fact be ignored, so as a whole, it's still a good map, I'd still put it in a good place, and it deserves to get the spotlight that people give it.